Welcome to the Fathers and Sons podcast, where we have meaningful conversations between fathers and their kids. Today's guest, Fraendy Clervaud, is a news anchor, author, fashion mogul, son of Haitian immigrants, and a father of 2 daughters. I first met Fraendy back at Soda City Comic-Con back in 2016. What started out as a conversation about the convention quickly became something much deeper as Fraendy poured wisdom and insight to me at the ripe age of 16. After me and my aunt left the convention, I was left thinking about that conversation for the rest of the day. Although time passes on and people slip into the background of your memories, I never forgot Fraendy and the impactful conversation we had that day. I always hoped that one day we would have another impactful conversation, and I was super stoked when the opportunity came. Without further ado, you guys are in for a treat. Enjoy the show.
What's up, man? How you doing today?
Hey, Caleb, I'm doing good, man. You know, the weather's pretty good today, so that's cool.
It is. It's fantastic. It's a welcome, nice. It's been raining a lot this past week, so
Very welcome.
Definitely welcome. Yeah, for sure, man. I'm so happy to have you on the Fathers and Sons podcast, man.
Yeah.
We talked like a while back in like 2016, and we had a really good conversation. I was like, I gotta have this guy on the podcast to talk to the people, man.
Wow.
Yeah.
I can't even remember what I even told you.
Dude, it was just really good insight because you were just talking about your experience and growing up with your parents being Haitian immigrants.
Yeah.
And just,
okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
You were sharing a lot about your past and just being like an outsider. And that resonated with me a lot, man.
I'm just really glad that I was able to drop some nuggets. You know, that's one of the things I've always wanted to do. I'm like, Lord, as I'm going on this journey of life, whatever I can do to help empower somebody else.
Without a doubt. Yeah, that's all. I mean, that's what life's about, man. That's what life's about. But yeah, man, so I mean, tell the people about who you are. I'm sure a lot of our audience, they know who you are. They've seen you. But for those who don't, man, just fill them in, man, about who you are, what you do.
Gotcha. Okay, everyone. My name is Fraendy Clervaud, and for a lot of you all know me on television as a news anchor for Watch Fox News in Columbia, South Carolina. And because we are on the World Wide Web, you can watch us anywhere you go if you download the Watch Fox app. Shameless plug, got to put that in there. Apart from that, you know, first of all, I am definitely husband. I'm a father, brother, uncle, all those things all mixed there and together. I also had the opportunity to write a children's book about 2 years ago, and it chronicles the life of a young boy by the name of Stephen, who wants to be the school announcer, but he stutters. And so we kind of navigate through his journey of how he was able to overcome some of those challenges. That book is based off of my life as a young boy who stuttered, and now I'm on television. So I wanted to show a lot of young kids, and especially primarily really going to say the children of color, what you have to experience and how you can let that stop you. Because one of the biggest things for me, especially with me being in the media, I know how representation is a big factor. And so many times some people may feel as if it's overboard, like, oh, why do we have to have this? Why do we have to do that? It's because there are a lot of individuals, like, you know, who look like me and you, Caleb, quite frankly, that need to see another way that, no, you're not a thug, you're not just a rapper, you're not just an athlete. You can do more than just that. So I wanted them to see all that. That's
fantastic, man. That is all fantastic. You've done so much. How old are you, Fraendy?
I am 36.
That's amazing, man. That's amazing.
36. Yep.
That's amazing, dude. That's so cool. That's so cool. So, I mean, growing up, tell us about your past, man. What was it like growing up with Haitian immigrants? Because you told me about that a long time ago.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man.
And that's something I was like, I got to ask him about that. Because a lot of our audience, like, they don't know about that experience. Like, they've grown up with parents that are been American born, the American style. But what was that like, man? How was it different?
Man, I loved every moment of it, and I still do, even now with our kids, because both me and my wife were of Haitian descent, and so we're teaching our kids the Haitian culture. In our household, I was not American first. I was Haitian first and American, even though, like, hey, mom and dad, we're, say y'all were born in Haiti. I wasn't, but it's like, this house, you're speaking Creole, you're speaking French and English.
Wow.
A lot of the major points that we learned, I know a lot of people could say this was hard work. Literally, when I say hard work, here you have my parents who came from another country who did not know English. They basically learned English on their own here in America. Looking at that work ethic, another thing is that my dad always instilled this in me. He said that your Haitian is in your blood and you have to carry that legacy. And so he was like, even though you are in America, you can never forget where you came from. And I'm so thankful that at a young age, he taught me, he and my mom, they both taught me Haitian Creole and French, and make it so much so we went to a Haitian speaking church. So for 18 years of my life, church was straight Creole and French at school, at home. So yeah, it was very good.
That's so cool, man. So what was it like having a Haitian father? What was that like?
Okay, having a Haitian father.
Yeah.
Haitian dads are the epitome of, what can I say? A real stern father.
Yeah.
I'll put it that way.
Right.
Haitian fathers, 9 times out of 10, you are afraid of a Haitian dad. I'll just say that way, because they were very much, it's like, okay, this is what it is. There's no back talk. There's no, no. What I tell you, you're going to do it. That type of thing. And so, but to be honest, now that I kind of look at how my dad raised us, I mean, there is no complaints. He has one son that's in the medical field. Another son is a lawyer. Our sister, his daughter, is a speech pathologist. And his other son is on television. By God's grace, he doesn't have any kids in jail. He doesn't have any kids on the street, all of that. So his parenting worked.
It's got results. It's got a good track record.
Exactly. It has results. And so I'm like, hey, we're here, because one thing that my dad also did was he instilled in us a fear. Now, when I mean fear, not that, I can't talk to my father. It was a respect. And as long as you're in this house, this is what it is. I don't want to hear no back talk. I don't want to hear nothing. And I really feel, me personally, is that we are missing that in this generation. Because we are a generation where everybody wants their parents to be their friend, and because we just want to be happy all the time. That's not gonna work.
I agree, man. That's something that a lot of times I think modern society is kind of left in the background, because sometimes people deem it too harsh, but the results that you get, like what you're talking with your dad, are extraordinary. And it's like, even the Bible talks about that. Like, you have to be able to discipline your children so they can, grow properly.
Right. And every child, I know this because me being their dad now, is different. However, but the one thing that we have, like, unfortunately, there's no parenting book for parents. You don't get a book and say, this is how you raise a son. This is how you raise a daughter. It's all, in a sense, based on what your parents taught you. And sometimes if you didn't have any parents, you learn as you go. And you're trying to figure it out, like, okay, what do I do here?
Right.
So it's cool. I would never take this journey away from the world. Like, I love it.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's so cool. So, I mean, growing up with a strict father, what was, like, how did you feel about that when you were, like, dealing with that, like, as a kid? Because I know, like, now you see the fruits of it, but when you were growing up, what was that like? How did you feel about that? Did you ever feel like anger or resentment?
There was sometimes not anger, but just like, oh, come on, how come my friends could be outside, or how come, they're going to the movies? Oh yeah, that's another thing. All of this, mom, dad, I'm going out with my friend. Right. Boy, sit your behind down. Where are you going? It was none of that. So it's like, it's interesting because, once again, because we were in a Haitian household, but they were in America. By the way, born Miami, Florida, so raised in Florida. So seeing how my classmates would be like, oh, we're going to the movies on Friday night.
Right.
I can't go. It's like, no, you stay home.
Right.
And sometimes I'm like, man, come on, Dad. Like, this is too strict. But then eventually, there were some things that we would begin to do, or we would begin to let us. But my dad, wanted to make sure that we were not a statistic.
Yeah.
The other thing for him was that my dad used to always let me know that, dude, not only are you a black male, you are a black male of immigrant descent. So automatically there are two knocks for you, because some people look at your last name and they know you're not an American. And so some people may feel as if you don't know you're not intelligent enough, you don't know enough, and all of that. So he was very big on making sure that all of us, all the brothers and my sister, that we did not end up a statistic.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. I'm sure, I can only imagine what that must have been like. Like, that's a lot of pressure, because, I've seen with, different immigrant parents, like they want their children to make the best of the opportunities that are here and be the best, but that's like, it's different. It's totally different than, being born here in America, and just because we get so comfortable with it, a lot of our parents are comfortable with it,
Caleb, you are right. And as someone of a Haitian descent, growing up, a lot of times I would always think to myself, wow, the people that are these kids born in America, they don't know how good they have it. Like, you don't want to go to school and it's free. Like, exactly. You don't want to do this, you don't have to pay for it. Now, I wasn't born in Haiti, but I do know the stories, and I do know a lot about there. Like, education is not free like it is here in America. So it's not like how, you can register free for kindergarten. No.
Right.
It's not like that. Even down to the point where, we have a lot of free things. Oh, I can get a credit card here, da 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 da.
Yeah.
There are things that are very different. And so because I think a lot of kids are so used to it, that they just figure that this is the way of life, and they don't take advantage of a lot of opportunities, which is why some individuals sometimes feel some type of way about immigrant families or children, because then you have the issue where it's like, these individuals are taking jobs. Right. These individuals are doing this. However, these individuals are doing the job that other people don't want to do.
That is true.
Yeah. So you have all of that. Yeah, I've literally seen it sometimes, even from some of my classmates. Like, dude, your parents were in school. Your parents have degrees. Like, my parents, my parents didn't have degrees. They didn't have that. So they basically built themselves up. And so, but to see other individuals whose parents went to college, got degrees, and it's like, what are you doing with your life?
Yeah. Right. That's a really good point. That seems to be like a common theme, like just the hustler mentality, and like kid hustlers as well, because it's just the perspective is so different, So I mean, yeah,
you're right. It is. And one thing is, in some standpoint, the hustle mentality, your side hustle, doing things, is good in its point. There has space and time for it, where you have to be able to balance certain things. But it's always good to look at a different perspective of things as well, because there's a reason why there are certain programs and things in place to kind of help you along the way.
Yeah, I totally get that, man. That's awesome. So, I mean, growing up, what's one memory you have with like your dad and, being a son that like has impacted you throughout your life?
Wow, there are so many.
Yeah,
honestly, I can imagine. The ones I can remember were the butt whoopings. I'm gonna be honest. Those, because he had to get me and my brother in line sometimes. He had to get me in check. So those are the things that I remember. And then the other thing I remember of my dad is him constantly telling me in Creole, "No c'est passeport." In English, that's translated to say your name is your passport, which means your personality, your reputation, that is all that you have. Yeah. So it's almost like now fast forward in 2021 and everybody has a brand and their brand, and God forbid you say one bad thing and everything is tarnished. So growing up, like, my dad was instilling that into us. No c'est passeport. all you have is your name, and that you have to keep your name clean, and you have to make sure that you do things the right way so that nobody has anything against you.
Yeah, that's good, man.
Mhm.
That's powerful. That is so powerful, man. So bringing it all together,
Yeah.
I know that you're a believer as well.
Oh yeah, Jesus all the way, man. I know
Right.
ifs and buts about it. I know a lot of people have the PC thing going on, but
Yeah.
for me and my household and me and my life, I know for a fact that if it wasn't for Jesus, my personal Lord and Savior, there's a lot of things I would not be able to do. And so I have to embrace that because that's my life. Can nobody take that away from me? So as for me in my house, it's Jesus all the way. That's
Right.
just
Heck yeah, man. Heck yeah, dude. That's how I feel. I feel the exact same.
yeah. You have to. Even as a father, one of the most important things for me is to raise my daughters in the fear and admonition of the Lord. And one thing is to show them being the king of the household. Like this is how what dad is supposed to do.
Yeah.
My responsibility is to teach you not just life, but teach you practicality and even teach you the gospel, because that's what the Bible tells us in the book of Deuteronomy. It says, to spread the gospel with your child, to make sure when you sit down, when you lay down, when you walk in Deuteronomy, to make sure they know about the God that you serve. And I don't see anything wrong with you explaining to your child why the family is run in a certain way. Now, obviously, you hope that your child embraces things, but when they get to an older age, they may decide to do something else. But I'm doing, me and my wife, of course, we're doing our part to say, this is how we run this household.
Right. That's good, man. That's good. And do you feel like your childhood has impacted a lot of your parenting as far as like in relation to God and whatnot? Like, how was it like compared to, growing up in a Christian household? How does your father affect your relationship with God?
Interestingly enough, though, my father and mom were not believers when they got married.
Yeah.
So my mother accepted Christ later down the line, and then eventually my dad did. Yeah. But the interesting thing is that even when my dad was not in church, there was a reverence that he had for church that it was like, okay, yeah, you do you, I'll be here, but okay, whatever. He was never the one to like not make us go to church.
Yeah.
But going back to what you're saying, how that helped me, eventually when my dad did get saved, I started noticing a change in his behavior, a whole lot different, the way he would think, the way he would speak. And that began to really make me see another aspect of how to be a father, how to be in charge of your family. And because at the end of the day, no matter what anybody else says, people are looking to the dad as okay, what are we going to do? What's happening?
Right.
They're looking at you. And I know that a lot of people want to do different things in their household, but at the end of the day, when God forbid if your kids get arrested or something happens, they're going to say, where was his father? Where was her dad?
Mm-hmm.
That's just how it is.
That's facts. That is so true, man, because we forget about how integral it is the father is in the household,
Yeah.
because it's forgotten sometimes, and people try to do it their own way and deviate from the way it was originally intended to be, but it never produces what it's supposed to.
And there's so many studies. I follow a lot of fatherhood groups on social media, and a lot of studies to show when a father is absent, either it be from the son's life or the daughter's life, there are a lot of negative effects. Now, obviously, we know everything is not set in stone. Just because you have a dad and a mom in your house, that doesn't mean that you're going to be the best child in the world. However, studies do show the majority of times having your dad in the house makes a major difference. Because going back for me, one thing that my dad taught me was, how to respect and also to obey my dad. So he was the first line of defense for authority for me. So because I respected authority at home, it was easier for me to respect authority outside, at school, at church. So because I heard a man's voice already, when a man speaks, it's like, oh, okay, yes, sir. All right.
Yeah, that's really good. So, I mean, with that authority, do you feel like that kind of helped you understand God better as well? Like being able to listen and obey whenever you hear his voice?
Yeah, because
Yeah.
with my dad, going back, one thing that he instilled was a work ethic and then also reverence and a fear. Now, when I say fear, it's not like the Freddy Krueger fear, the
Right.
boogeyman fear. No,
Right. Right.
I mean like a respect and a reverence, like, okay, there are certain things I'm not going to do around you. And
Yeah.
so I learned similar to this. Okay, the Bible talks about the 10 Commandments, it talks about obeying God.
Yeah.
So my father is like, when you're in my house, these are my rules. This is what happens. This is what's going on. So
Yeah.
because I was already familiarized with my physical father, so when it came to learning scripture and Sunday school and all of that, it kind of was like, okay, duh, it makes sense. Okay, this is what
Right.
God wants. That's what
Yeah.
my daddy's doing at the house. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure that's a really good insight, man, because I learned recently that actually a lot of people that grow up fatherless, when they try to connect with God, a lot of times they have a struggle with it because they don't recognize authority back at home. So
Yeah.
it's hard for them to imagine like something much bigger than that, like the Father in heaven and that type of authority. So there's a lot of like cloudiness sometimes when people are first starting off, and it's like they're trying to figure things out because they don't have that model in the home.
Right. I remember before Corona, that is, when we were
Yeah.
go to church and with everybody there, pack the pews. You can't do that now.
Right.
But we
Right.
were there. I never forget that my pastor would preach a lot about that, why
Yeah.
certain individuals may be apprehensive about accepting Christ or following God is because they don't have that figure in their life. And so for them, if my dad wasn't there or my father figure wasn't there, God is going to leave me too, type of
Yeah.
deal. So I remember him preaching that one day, and then it clicked. I was like, oh, that's why this person, I can understand now. Now you have a little bit more compassion for that individual because you get it. There's like a missing link for them.
Yeah. That it definitely that I can concur. I mean, it would change your insight when you understand how that works because people come to the church, but you don't really know their background and their story. You just see them as as they are. So it's like
Right.
it's a lot. You can have a lot of judgment there. We don't understand everything it took to even get them in the church.
That that could preach right there, Caleb. That could preach right there. Because yeah, I also look at church for me as a
Yeah.
hospital many times.
Yeah.
Where everybody's from different backgrounds.
Mhm.
You may have somebody who's been saved all their life. You may have somebody who just got saved, somebody who doesn't know. So there's a whole lot. And that's the importance of the pastor being very sensitive
Yeah.
to the leading of the Holy Spirit as to how does he minister to these people? Because you just can't assume that because I'm here that, oh, I should know.
Yeah. That's true. That's good, man. That's really good. And it kind of goes back to what you were saying about, your dad, like you understood why he was doing it. So
Yeah.
even though if you disagree with something or don't understand it, like there's a reason behind it. So it's like, it all ties together in that sense.
Man, you're absolutely right. And I should add this too now. My
Yeah.
dad was not just this stern person. Oh my God, I'm afraid of him.
Right.
I love my dad. And thank God he's still alive.
Yeah.
And so even with that, learning a whole lot. God, I lost my train of thought. Wait a minute. You was like, even with that, with gosh, see what happens. I
That
know.
happens.
So with my father, like even though he was very stern, but he was also loving in many other aspects.
Yeah.
So his time, his work ethic, making sure, if it's one thing my dad did, was making sure his family has a roof and has food.
Yeah.
My dad made sure his kids were, and his wife, my mama,
Right.
made sure that we were not out in the street. If he had to work 2-3 jobs, he would make sure that we were all good before he could go to sleep.
Right. That's amazing. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome, man. As far as like, did your siblings, do they all kind of see it the same way now? Like looking back,
Yes.
Yeah, that's good.
You know what? Oh, thank you. That brought my
Oh,
what I was gonna
look
say.
at God.
So what happened is, yes, even now, so all of my siblings were
Yeah.
all married and we have kids.
That's awesome.
And so now, literally, when you have kids,
Yeah.
is when you really begin to start hearing your dad and your mom's voice.
Yeah, right.
Start hearing like, oh, that's what dad was meant. Oh, that's what mama kept saying. Now that you see, because now you see it in your kids, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, now I completely understand. And it kind of gives you almost a blueprint as to how to raise your kids, and then sometimes what not to do.
Yeah.
Because there are times, once again, like I said, there's not a parental guidebook. So there are things that your
Right.
parents might have done that might not work out for your kids. The other thing, society is completely different. So how my parents were able to raise us in the 80s and the 90s,
Yeah.
you can't do that now in 2021. It's not going to work. There are, I think, a whole lot more pluses of how society was structured than it is now. I think because it's a lot of just whatever you want to do, however, and many times you could kind of see there's an issue there with family members.
Yes. That is so true, man. That is so true. And I would agree. It's a huge plus to how it used to be as opposed to now, because it feels like a lot of times things have gotten softer, and I think it's because people reacted poorly to a lot of times their parents' parenting style. So they're like, if I change this and go less strict, my kids will enjoy their childhood more. But a lot of times,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Are you good?
No, many times when I look back, and even now I'm 36, I could be honest.
Yeah.
My dad did this before. I was like, you were right. I was like, you and mama were right. Like, I know that sometimes I got on my nerve and I didn't understand, but it's like now I completely can see why you were very big on me not having friends. Now, when I mean not having friends, I mean, we had friends, but in my household, if my parents don't know you, who is this person? Who's their daddy? No, they're not coming up in my house. They were very frank because they wanted to make sure. They were very big on, you can't have all these people in your circle that you don't know because not everybody is for you.
Right.
And I didn't get that until when you go to college, high school, even now when you're an adult and you're like, man, now I see why my dad only had like 2 close guy friends.
Right.
Now I understand why he didn't have a whole crew.
Right. Right. That's really good. That goes back to like a lot of, in like the Bible, it talks about how, birds of a feather flock together, and how you have like friends that sit closer than a brother. But it's like, you can't have a ton. Not every relationship is going to be like that. You don't want every, your circle to be just so. I can get that.
Right. And it is very important because a lot of people have a different type of mindset, and you have to be very careful who pours into you. And there are times that you're like, oh, that's my homeboy. Oh, that's my homegirl. That's my friend. Yeah. And it's like, no, there are certain things that they're doing. What they're saying is like, where are they in life? And especially if you have a lot of determination. For instance, I always say this. I ended up going ahead to go back to school to get a master's degree because honestly, my brother and my sister, they got all these degrees. I'm like, y'all nerds. Right. I'm the only one with the bachelor's. And so like my brother has a JD. He has master's. My sister has her master's. Yeah. And so I'm the only one with the bachelor's. And so it's like, because, I'm seeing them, it pushed me to want to do more. Yeah. But I always joke around, I'm the celebrity of the family. That example is that, what about your friends? How are your friends pushing you for more? Maybe it might not be in college, but hey, I'm starting a business. I'm investing with this person, or I'm going into the military. I'm going to make this become a career for me. Yeah. But so that's very important.
Yeah, that's huge. Having the circle around you is like huge. And even you having like your brothers and sisters, like that it seems like, did that push you as well, like, to up your game as far as like on education?
Yes, it did
Yeah.
because and also again what's important and and this is what it is for me. We are children of immigrants from Haiti.
Yeah.
So for us wanting to really make our parents proud and being, Black, that is a big deal for us because
Yeah.
we really wanted people to see the difference is that, oh, like I said, my brother, he's an attorney. He has a
Yeah.
law firm now with his wife.
Right.
That's huge for my parents. My
Yeah.
sister is a speech language pathologist where she helps people with their speech. That's major. You have parents that are knocking on SLP's doors because my child has challenges, help them. My other brother's in the medical field where he's helping people's lives. And so when I saw all of this, I was like, oh God, is TV enough? I was like, am I supposed to do something else? But, yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That's funny. It's like we all have our own paths that we're supposed to walk, and I think God has it aligned to where each one of his kids, we all have different paths to intertwine, and we have to kind of keep focused on our own race. So it's like it's good to have people that push you, but also to be, mindful of who you are as well, like in your own identity, because it is different.
Yeah.
Everyone's different. For sure. But I mean, so as far as like when you first became a father, man, what was that like?
Woo! Caleb, I'll never forget the day that my daughter was born. I actually was covering a shooting on Two Notch Road. It was in the parking lot of the mall, of the Columbia Mall where Macy's is.
Right.
And so I never forget, it was an early morning shooting. I ended up going home. And long story short, I had to rush my wife to the doctor, eventually the hospital. And our daughter was born, and I was there. I want to see it all. I was like, I want to be in the room. I want to see the head come out.
Right.
I'm not one of these that I want to see it all. And
so
they're just watching my daughter be delivered. And it's like an overwhelming feeling comes upon you, like, wow, I helped to make that human.
Yeah.
And that's something that never leaves you, that for the rest of your life, you have a human that you are responsible for. I know it sounds funny, but you have a living creature that looks to you for guidance, stability, for security, financially, spiritually, everything. They look to you. And there are times where you wonder, am I adequate enough?
Yeah.
Am I good enough to be a father? Am I a good dad? Am I a good husband? Am I doing what I have to do right for my kids? And you think about that a lot of times. And I also understand as a father how it's not about you. You will learn very fast that what you want goes out the window when you have kids. It literally, Caleb, it's going to go out the window. Well, if you are a true father, let me put it that way.
Right.
It's going to go out the window because everything now is about your kids, because you want your arrows to be well. The Bible talks about how you have arrows in your quiver, and, you got to get them ready and aim them, which is your kids, in a certain direction. Right. And so it starts young by making sure that you are pouring into them what they need. Everything, not just spiritually, but socially, financially, all of that, you have to give it to them.
That's really good, man. And I can imagine it is a lot. And I think I'm glad you brought up that point about feeling adequate, because I think a lot of fathers feel inadequate, and it causes them to run either from like their child's life entirely, or to just not be present emotionally or be there for the kid while still living in the same house.
Yeah, because there are so many things coming up against you as a father. So, you have your own self that you have to make sure that you're sane and you're stable in yourself. But then you have other things pulling at you. You want your kids to be in the best school. You want them to have access to good education. You want them to do, et cetera, this and that. Yeah. And then many times, honestly, you kind of look and see other people, and then you kind of begin to compare yourself. But I've gotten to the point where scripturally, I was like, that's why God said, don't compare yourself to nobody. You find out by yourself. Because one thing I've learned, Caleb, people are not going to tell you what they did to get what they got. So there's a lot of times you're trying to, oh, I have to be like so-and-so, that couple, and I have to have this house and do that. Yeah, right. Man, please stay in your lane because you have no idea what that person did to get what they got.
That's true. That's true. And that could be like, even, you know, a lot of times you'll see someone in a really high place, but like they did a lot of crooked things to get there.
And facts.
Yeah.
Seriously,
Right.
because you really don't know. Because a lot of times the other thing is that everybody wants to keep up with the Joneses. You know, I have to have, oh, this the biggest house. You know, I have to have now the new island. Now I have to have the new paint. I have to have the new car. I have to have the this and that. But to what extent? And our focus is backwards because we're focused so much on the appearance, the outside, but on the inside, you're nasty, you're dirty.
Right.
What's the point?
Exactly. That's so good, man. And it's like, you know, it's so easy to get lost in those comparisons. And it's like, you know, like we were saying, you get lost in that, not knowing what a person did to get there. And even like going back to your parents, like they could have looked around and all the other parents were like, okay, this is how we're gonna raise our kids. But they chose to follow their own way of doing things and saw how that, you know, bared really good fruit.
Absolutely, man. Yeah.
Yeah, because any other path, like y'all would have been completely different. They were like, you know, we're just gonna do the typical American style. You know, this seems to be working pretty well.
Yeah, and I tell you, they made sure, and especially for the guys, that okay, this is what you have to do to make sure you are stable in your own self.
Yeah.
That nobody's gonna do nothing for you. And so that was a major thing for me, to the point I remember being a kid and I'll walk around doing things like, oh, I don't need your help. I got it. I know how to do this. To be self-sufficient, because that's very important, because I know it's gonna be a conversation for another day, but the society we're living in, for sometimes I think we are raising men that are not what they need to be. Like a lot of times they're not self-sufficient. They're not independent. It's like, dude, what is wrong with you?
Right. That's so true. And a lot of people, they don't really know of another way of life because they've always been like dependent on, you know, their parents. And it's like they don't know. So they don't really see that like you have to actually grow and be independent, be your own person. And it's like a lot of times my grandpa says we have to be able to cut the umbilical cord and like
there you go. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's one reason why for me I am I hold on to this, that I believe like a lot of children should go away for college. Obviously with the pandemic things are different, but that's one thing. When I left home, I went to University of Florida, go Gators. When I went to Florida, I was by myself. Like I was 6 hours away from home. I couldn't just pull up to my parents' house. I had to cook on my own, clean on my own, make decisions on my own. And that really helped me to be now to the point where I found my wife getting married, that my wife isn't taking care of me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Your wife is not your mama.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So you should, some things you should already know as a man. And I think that's what's important. It helped me when I was by myself.
Yeah. So like having self-sufficiency before you find a partner.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so as far as like, how did you meet your wife, man? And how did the values you learned from your parents impact, you know, your relationship with your now wife? Yeah.
Yeah, very big. Okay, because now this is me. Because I was raised in a Haitian household.
Yeah.
And my mom, awesome mother.
Yeah.
I was like, I need to marry a Haitian woman like my mama.
Right.
It was very big. And also because my culture, very big on the language. And I always said, I was like, you know, Lord, I really want to marry someone who's of Haitian descent, just like, you know, me. And so I met my now wife at University of Florida. Long story short, we, you know, just started talking and, you know, hey, look at us now. We're married with 2 kids. So my wife is also, what I said, of Haitian descent. And so that really helps to be in a household where we can both speak French or Creole and putting that into our children. Now, it's not as good as my parents' Creole and French, because obviously, you know, I mean, that was their language.
Right.
But at least we have some to give to the kids so they know.
Yeah. Right. hey, man, that's gonna happen. So I mean, do you ever find yourself comparing yourself to, the way you were raised, like as far as in raising your children? Have you like chosen to do some things differently?
Yes, there were some things I'm like, okay, this worked. This worked a
Yeah,
lot over here, but this right here, not so much. Because I think one other thing too is understanding the dynamic of every child.
yeah,
And I think for a lot of some parents and the dynamic of learning every child, that was the biggest thing. Where even
yeah,
now, both of my daughters are completely different. Their
yeah.
personalities are different. Like it's like,
Right,
whoa, okay, I
right.
have to do this differently with that one, but obviously I love them the same, but it's
Yeah,
different. And
yeah,
that's one thing I had to learn. Like, okay, this is what I could do differently for the different personalities.
yeah,
A lot of times you'll find yourself, well, how come you can't be like your brother? Well, how come you can't be like your sister? Why you have to be so extra? Or
yeah.
why you have to be so difficult? And sometimes as a kid, you end up growing up thinking something is wrong with you, but it isn't. Your personality is just different. Like if we're brothers, Caleb, and
Yeah,
let's say your favorite color is red, my favorite color is
right,
brown. And then because your parents might like red, then because I like brown, it's like I'm the trouble child. And it's like, no,
right,
preference is just different. So it's like learning
right.
how to parent personalities that are different, but making them know that you're still loved.
Yeah, that's good, man. I think a lot of parents, some people forget about that, because they want every child to be like, their older brother Jimmy, or they were the perfect child, and it's like, no, there's no such thing as a perfect kid.
Oh man, like my brother, he was an athlete. I mean,
Yeah,
any sport, football, basketball,
yeah,
track. I mean, you name it. I wouldn't be surprised if my brother did lacrosse. I
right.
mean, everything you could think about, he did.
Yeah,
And it was
right.
like, I will say at least I did do track and field, but
Yeah.
I was more of the politician in school.
Mhm.
I was the class president. I was student government. I did all of that. That was more of my field. But there is no way I'm getting into politics. Oh heck no. Not that's not no 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 no. I'll stick in my lane. I'm fine.
Right. That's a crazy game. I felt the same way because in high school I was like involved in a lot of clubs and stuff, but
Yeah.
the actual politics, I'm like,
Yeah, I'm like, peace. Not for me.
oh, the good thing is you can like people and love people, but you do not have to actually go into politics for that. You can impact your community in a number of ways. Oh man, but that's so good. So I mean, as far as your relationship with your dad now, has it changed since when you were a kid?
Yeah, it's really gotten more close. I noticed that when I was in college, it really got to a whole nother, I guess, level or so, where it's more of a friend because now, transitioning into an older man
Yeah,
and understanding, okay, Friendy, you're not a kid no more. This is what you're doing. And even now, being a father, I can call him sometimes. Hey, Dad, what about this, and et cetera, et cetera. And
yeah,
so even when I talk to him now, not that I'm his equal, not at all, but we have a whole lot of similarities now because, okay, I have a wife, I have kids, I'm making
yeah,
some responsibilities. So now we can almost talk similarly.
yeah. That's good, man.
Yeah.
See, I can only imagine like how that dialogue changes over the years. Because I mean, you grow in your experiences that are much different than when you were just a kid. You
Right.
know, but it's amazing to see how it's all guided you. Even like I'm sure like watching your dad, how he treated your mom has impacted you, how you treat your wife. Would you say so?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. That's a whole nother thing because for a lot of guys and girls, but I'll say for me, for a lot of guys,
Yeah,
how you see your father treat your mom can either do two things, can make you do the opposite or
yeah,
do the exact same thing.
right,
Because for some guys, let's say you're in an abusive relationship, thank God that was not our,
yeah,
situation.
right,
If you're in an abusive relationship, for some guys, that's what they would do, or they may change it around and say, no, because my dad did this, I'm not going to do this to the woman I love.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, absolutely. It really speaks volumes because it shapes your mind as to how do you talk to a woman? How do you treat a woman? Because especially in the house and for like, if you're, 18 years of your life, you're looking at a man dialogue with your mama. And it's
Yeah.
like, oh, that's how I need to dialogue with my wife.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's good, man.
Yeah.
That's really good. That's really good. So as far as, being a believer,
Mhm.
a son, a father, how has God affected your parenting now?
Ah, man. Honestly, you pray a whole lot when you become a parent. you because even
Right.
my daughters are young, they're 7 and 4. But
Yeah.
even in that, because a perfect example now with this pandemic, where my wife and I have to figure out parenting strategies. How do we deal with them being in a house where,
Yeah.
every other weekend we could go, we could go out, we could go out of town, we could do this, we could do that, but that's not the case. Now I know some people may listen, everybody's different, but
Yeah.
this pandemic is taking a lot of people differently. For us, we've had death in the family because
Yeah.
of COVID.
Right.
So our perspective is different from how the way other people may feel like, oh, it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
So with that being said, you have to learn a whole lot of different things. Having to learn, I want to make sure that I'm pouring into my child the right way, or even like, Lord, help me identify what are you calling her to be. For instance, my daughter, she likes building things. Literally, she will stay here, pick up paper, and make a rocket. She'll do stuff and say, Daddy, look, I made a ship. And I'm like, wait, what? And it's a legit ship.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, she built a ship for real. And I'm like, babe, she built a ship. And it's so,
Yeah.
all of those type of things. Then you want to make sure that you're not living vicariously through your child, but like, okay, Lord, what calling do you have out of her or him? And that we need to make sure we cultivate that.
Right.
A case in point, a lot of dads, when they have son, oh, you gotta be a football player. You gotta play ball like I did. You have to do this. Or
Right.
some others, their daughters, oh, you have to do a pageant. You have to do this. You have to do that. And if you're not careful, you start living vicariously through them, and that may not be what God has for them.
That's good. So it's like you're interfering with God's intention for like their life, basically.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. A lot of parents sometimes don't want to hear that, but it reminds me of in the Old Testament, Hannah, where after she gave birth to Samuel, she was like, okay, God, I give him back to you. Obviously,
Yeah.
I know she wanted that baby, but she was
Right.
like, well, I promised the Lord. So she had to deliver him to Eli, where he was instructed in the house of the Lord. And so that's a perfect example for me. A lot of times I have to remember, okay, God, what do you want out of my child? If I have to give her up to you, I got to do it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's good. It's kind of goes back to even like with Abraham and Isaac, he had to be willing to do what God was willing to do with Jesus, like, many, many years down the road.
Absolutely.
Like,
Yeah, you're
are you
right.
willing to give it back, what you wanted, for so long,
Mhm.
not just doing, because I mean, no parent wants to have to go through that. Like, I'm sure Hannah probably was like, I do not want to do this. And
Right, right.
Abraham was like, I definitely don't want to do this.
Yeah, especially when the baby's in your hand, you're like, oh, and you're like, wait, okay, am I being too deep with this? Am I being too overly spiritual? All those things start happening, and so, and even apart from that, when you're a parent, you can't neglect your spouse. Like many times, people when they have their kids, it's like, oh, you forget your wife, you forget your husband, and then when the child grows up and leaves the house, you like don't know each other anymore because you spent all that time on the child that now you don't even recognize your own spouse.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's really good, man. So as far as like advice, what advice would you give to children of immigrants?
The advice, do not try to change who you are. Embrace your culture, embrace your language. Hey, if you have an accent, embrace that too. Because a lot of times we feel that we have to change when we're somewhere so people can accept me now, or I gotta be different, or I have to
Yeah.
change this. No. You embrace who you are because that's the most important thing. The scripture tells us in the book of Revelation that every tribe, every language, every tongue shall come before the Lord, shall be before the throne. And so what is that telling me here? It's not just, God did not just create America. Right. God created Australia. God created Africa. God created Europe. It's okay for you to be different. And it's okay for you to embrace that, because that's what makes us so unique. Because if everybody was the same, we'd be boring.
That's good. That's really good. I'm sure a lot of our audience is going to appreciate that, because it's something, even like within media, depending on who the creator is of, like, say, a film or a book, it depends on what type of stories you get. And it's a lot of times people grow up not hearing those stories, or hearing of other people who experience that same thing, having strict parents. Because a lot of times it can be difficult when you're constantly comparing to other people and students you may go to school with, all that type of stuff. It's a lot.
It is.
Yeah. So I mean, also, what advice would you give to fathers and sons out there?
Okay, so I gave advice for fathers. I don't have a son yet. Who knows what the Lord's gonna have in the future? But advice for fathers, number one, like, I have to say this: a prayer is a big deal, and finding a lot of your answers, the ways of life, through scripture. And then also is that having a friend that you could go to, like one of your buddies, a go-to guy. Off the top of my head, I only have two that I really trust. So that really helps you a whole lot. And then also, as a father, to be comfortable in who you are and not have to compare yourself like the dad next door or the father who, honestly, like, guys, it's this, you grow up that, you have to have the most money, the biggest house, and you have to be the one to shout all these things about your family. And to an extent, that's it. But then to an extent, you have to understand that you cannot kill yourself to be like somebody else. And that's what's important. And I had to embrace who I was, to the point that now, if you told me that I'd be an anchor man on television when I was younger, I'd say you lying.
Right.
But now I have the issue where it's turned around, where people are asking me, or how can I be like you? And I'm like, you don't want to be like me. Embrace who you are. So fathers, just stick to who you are.
Yeah. And what advice would you give to people who are trying to find their way and maybe parents in the future, but they're not sure how to go about that?
Let me see, finding their ways. The best thing I would say is to find a couple or somebody who's already where you want to be.
Yeah.
One of the things that I did was when me and my wife were dating, we didn't get advice from single people. We got advice from folks who were married. And
that's good.
Okay, why did I get advice from you single? And I understand that, no shade, but I think my parents, after being married 35 something years, her parents being married that long, I think you can get an aspect of how you have to treat your husband and wife. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I think that's the advice I would give to those, to seek godly counsel, and also to find someone who's already where you are and you can hear from them. And don't think you know everything. We need the elders. We need people who are older than us, because that's how you are empowered. How can you get empowered if you know everything? You just got to be quiet and listen. And so that's what I had to learn. And that's my advice. That's
so good, man. That is so fantastic. It's been an honor to have you on this show, man. This has been a wonderful conversation.
Man, thank you, Caleb, for having me. You and your biblical name, Caleb. Spying out the land, but you know what? You spied the land, but you came back with a good report.
Oh man, thank you, Fraendy. This has been awesome, man. So where can people find you on social media?
Okay, on social media, you can find me on Twitter at Fraendy Newsman. That's Fraendy Newsman. And then on Instagram, it's Trendy Fraendy. So Trendy and my name, Fraendy. That's where you'll be able to find me. And also, www.stutteringsteven.com, which is also the official website for the book Stuttering Steven.
Awesome, guys. Yeah, be sure to check out his book. It's an awesome project. And definitely check out his Instagram as well, because this girl, Fraendy, if you guys don't know, is a fashion mogul. He's fantastic. Of course.
Yeah, thanks, Caleb.
Of course, dude. You've always been into fashion. I'm like, myself.
Don't worry, man. I got you. I got you. You just call me.
Yeah, thank you, Fred. I appreciate it, man. Well, dude, it was so awesome to have you on the show, man. I look forward to chatting with you soon.
Same here, man. Have a good one.
All right, you too, man. All right, bye.
Now that was an amazing conversation. It was such an honor to have Fraendy on the show and to be able to glean some of his wisdom and learn from his life story. There was so much insight that was shared. One of my biggest takeaways was when Fraendy was talking about his father and how his father told him growing up in Creole, your name is your passport. This means that your personality and reputation is all you have. I think that's something that we can all take into our own lives. We can all strive towards being better in relationships and building a good reputation with people from all walks of life. Something else I took away was how we often view tough love as something to run from when it's really something we should embrace. Fraendy's father was tough on him growing up, but if you look at the fruits that were produced from it, we're able to see the bigger picture and why things had to be the way they are. Having influences like that play a huge role in our lives as people. As Fraendy stated, we do have to be mindful of who we allow to pour into us. But we can also choose to be someone that pours life into others, like Fraendy's dad poured life into him. Thank you guys so much for checking out the Fathers and Son podcast. Be sure to check out my book, A Letter to My Father, which is on Amazon now. For more info on my book, as well as where you can find Fraendy and read his book, Starting Stephen, check out the description below. Lastly, be sure to like and subscribe for more content, and make sure you hit that bell to get notified whenever we drop a video. I'll see you guys next Wednesday for a brand new episode of Fathers and Sons. Until then, peace.